Well, welcome. So glad to have you here tonight as we wrap up the For the One series. So glad to have David here with us.
Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Sure, thank you.
Hey, I want to jump in. And one of the things that I love about LCBC, and I think that you probably love about LCBC, is the vision. I love that we have a vision to reach the state of Pennsylvania. I think it's incredible because there's a need. So again, it's not about bigger church, it's about reaching people who are lost. It's going after the one.
Exactly.
But I also love that we don't just try to do that under the banner of LCBC, but we actually partner with other churches. And you mentioned that a little bit tonight. Could you just tell us about those pastor roundtables that you do?
Yeah, so what we do, and the way this actually came about, Jason, is we probably 5 or 6 years ago had met with the Marriott Corporation. And while we were with some of their executives, they were talking about the fact that they're the world's largest hotel company, but they've got 30 different brands that are all under the Marriott brand. And so you may be at one of their hotels and not even know it, but that still allows them to be the biggest hotel company in the world. And as we came away from that, we just came away saying, okay, so it's not about LCBC having buildings all the way across Pennsylvania. I mean, that'd be fun, and it may happen someday, but that's not really the goal. The goal is to be sharing Jesus across the state of Pennsylvania. So whether it's our name or somebody else's name on the building, it doesn't matter. So we came away saying, how can we help other churches just be better at spreading the good news of Jesus? So we get together. I actually invited the pastors of the largest churches in Pennsylvania to get together with me. First time probably about 4 years ago now. And so we meet twice a year, and they'll come in on a afternoon at 2 o'clock. They stay the next day till 2, and we just talk and just share best practices, and they want to know what we're doing and what they can learn from us, and so we'll share that. But it's just a real fun time of doing that. So we started out with one group of 12, and I think we've got 7 groups going now.
That's
and
incredible.
So just real fun to see.
So even that's grown over the last 5 years in the relationships.
And I think we're just scratching the surface on that, because what we find is pastors are lonely, and they don't have a whole lot of other people they can talk to and say, are we doing this right? Are we doing it wrong? And somebody will complain in their church, and so then they're like, should I be listening to that complaint, or am I okay? And so it's just good to be able to talk with others.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting that you say that. One of the things I try to encourage our team with, our Next Steps team, is that we have a network of pastors built here because we have 19 locations. But other churches, I mean, it kind of feels like you're out there on your own.
You do it and you hope you're doing it right, but you don't know. So
can you tell us a little bit, because again, I think this is fascinating. We learn from other churches all the time, and we'll go in and we'll invest that way. So like, what are we asking of these pastors who come and really that get poured into and get to have this network? What does that look like for them?
We don't charge them anything. It's free. And so as you guys invest in LCBC, as you give to LCBC, you're actually investing in making that happen. And we've kind of gone back and forth. Do we charge? I do other mentoring, same exact thing for other organizations, and they'll charge $5,000, $6,000 a person for the same kind of period of time. And we just said, we're focusing just on Pennsylvania, at least right now. So let's target Pennsylvania, and we've learned from others, and so let's give it away free. And so we do that, and that's real fun to be able to do that. The only thing we ask them to do, and so each time we'll say, when we start, when we finish, we'll say, so the goal is that you go now and you do the same thing with other churches in your region, because all of us have churches that are following us and smaller than us. And so the largest churches in Pennsylvania, there's 2 or 3 that are in the 4,000 to 5,000 person range. The rest of them are all in the 1,500 to 2,500 range, but there's hundreds, if not thousands, that are 500 or less. And so, man, if each of those guys that we're working with would go and impact churches around them and make a huge difference. So,
I love that. That ripple effect gives me the goosebumps a little bit.
Yeah.
So thank you for your generosity, because whether you know it or not, you're actually impacting churches all across Pennsylvania, and super excited for that.
Yeah.
So I loved hearing from you and Ruth. So thank you for jumping on video and sharing your story, and thank Ruth especially. I don't know if she loves
She's not excited about those things, but she willingly does them.
And she does a great job too.
She does, yeah.
So could you tell us, because again, I just love that. I mean, even as we talk about For the One, this might be new to some of us, but like this is something that you and she have prioritized, and 6, 7 times even throughout your time here as a church. And let me just ask you, like, what advice do you have about how do we prioritize our finances to keep, one of the things we talk about around here is keeping one eye on eternity.
Yeah.
And when we say, yes to something like For the One, we're saying let's prioritize our finances for eternity, making an investment that we might not see on this side of eternity.
Yeah.
So what have you learned about that through the, handful of times that you've jumped in and done that?
So I would say it never is easy. Ruth alluded in the video and said that it gets easier from the standpoint of trusting God, because we've watched him come through in so many ways for us. And so it's easier that way, but it's equally hard every time we're trying to make the decision. I mean, we thought that we had arrived at what we're doing in this one, and you can see on the video, we hadn't talked about the fact that I'm feeling like maybe we ought to do something different. And so we're still in the midst of that conversation. And yet it's incredibly exciting, because I think so often, again, we get bored in our relationship with God. And there's no reason for God to need to step in and help us because we're not doing anything that requires his help. And when we stretch and say, okay, God, we're going to trust you on this one, then he has always shown up in just real special ways. And if you've never done that, you don't have any stories to tell. I mean, I can tell you how we, for about a 9-year period of time, we would fly back and forth to Texas with our 2 kids, and we never paid for a ticket because we would constantly get bumped. And that's back when the airlines did that a little bit more. And so, I mean, I could tell you story after story of sitting at the airport and they say, we're looking for volunteers. Ruth will even, and the kids will joke where they claim, I almost knocked down a little lady to get to the counter before she did. So, I mean, but literally it was 9 years that we did not buy a ticket because we kept getting bumped.
That's
and we'd get free
incredible.
tickets. It's just stuff like that. So you could say, oh, well, you're just lucky. It's not. It's God providing in, I think, real miraculous ways.
Yeah, I love that. And
yeah.
so a few weeks ago, we encouraged you to even start having that conversation with your spouse, with your family, whatever that looks like. Katie and I have been doing that. And it's been real fun to just, again, go back and forth about, hey, where do we feel like God's nudging? And feeling like we're landing on a spot where we feel like, okay, I think we're confident to move forward. But it took some time.
Yeah.
And so, again, we've been saying for weeks, because it is just communication and really learning, hey, how do we trust God in this?
And it's hard to have those conversations. I mean, as many times as Ruth and I have had this conversation, like even her surprise on the video, I've been hesitant to say, so wait a minute, I'm not sure we've really landed on our number yet. And so then it came out in the video. And so we're still kind of having those awkward conversations right now about that. So,
Yeah, that's great. So again, if you're feeling awkwardness, you're not alone, but keep engaging,
exactly.
keep doing that, and just seeing where God's nudging you that way.
Yeah.
So you brought up a few things throughout this message that I thought were super powerful, but the one that I think that we do a lot as followers of Jesus is, man, we get maybe fixated on the wrong things. And we're all guilty of it, but one of the things that you said is the mission trip example. Like, hey, we went to this mission trip and somebody came back and the blind man got sight and that was awesome.
Yeah.
But we lose sight of like the stuff on the other side where it's like, hey, somebody's eternity was changed.
Yeah.
And as you said that, my mind went to the words of John chapter 14, verse 12. Jesus talks about this idea of, hey, you're going to be able to do the things that I do and even greater things.
Yeah.
And I honestly think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong because you definitely know more than I do, but the greater things that Jesus is referencing really is that life change.
Yeah.
It's that seeing somebody saved and moving from death to life.
Exactly.
And so why do you think that when we just take our eyes off of that and we kind of look towards the other things? And one of the ways this I think plays out practically in church world too is, we'll talk about, hey, what do I want? Like, let's go, maybe, could you give me some deeper teaching? Or I'm feeling like I'm not getting fed enough.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's never what Jesus talked about.
Yeah.
So what would you say to that?
And Jason, it's fascinating to me. If you read through the New Testament and you read what Jesus talked about and you read what the Apostle Paul talked about, I mean, the Apostle Paul is constantly saying it's just the good news. It's the good news of Jesus. It's good news of Jesus. And we'll read a portion of Scripture and we'll fixate on that one verse as though that's the most important thing when it's just a passing statement that Jesus made or Paul made. And they just constantly, it's all about introducing people to Jesus. And I think what happens to us in churches is, I don't know if we get bored, we turn it inward and we think it's about me and what am I getting out of this? But I don't think we can get bored with life change, and I don't think we can get bored hearing stories or watching baptisms and hearing stories over and over of life change, because Jesus says that's what it's all about. So
Yeah, absolutely. I heard a pastor recently say, in Christianity, there's no deep teaching, there's deep doing.
Yeah.
And at first that strikes you as like, ooh, is that okay to say? But then he was referencing even like, I think John the Baptist, who's just saying like, so here's what you do. If someone is hungry, go feed them. If somebody needs a shirt, give them yours. And so really where it plays out is, what are we willing to engage in? What are we willing to do? And so I've loved this even series because it just helps bring us back to, hey, God's calling us to go after that person that doesn't know him yet.
Yeah.
And it's not complicated. It's not going to be deep theology. It's the invitation.
Yeah.
It's just saying, hey, would you come with me
Exactly.
to church? And
Exactly.
so I've been challenged personally to come back to those things. And so thank you for even just leading us and directing us to focus on the heart of God through this series.
Cool.
I'm excited to see how he shows up. I know we've got big goals and big plans, but man, we're trusting God. But I also love the reminder that it takes all of us and all of our part. So again, just continue to talk to God and follow his nudges. And we're excited to see how he shows up in your life. David, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.